Hello and welcome to AP US History. I'm doing things a little bit differently this year for those of you that have me as sophomores. I'm flipping a lot of things because some of you are online and also because this is largely a self-motivated, self-driven course. So I've tried to give you as many tools as possible to be able to be successful. So the first thing I want us to look at today, this is probably the first video besides the welcome one that you'll actually watch, is an overview of the topics of period one. We do cover AP US history by topics, and the first of these topics is the period between 1491 and 1607. At the beginning of the topics, and you do have these PowerPoints, by the way, as well. It's in the Henrietta book, chapters 1 and 2, which is going to kind of cross over into period 2 as well. But these are the two chapters I want you to look at as we review and go over period 1. Every period begins with a topic called contextualization. So in contextualizing period 1, what you're going to be looking at are the things that you need to associate with this time period that will give you a context in which to understand the main themes and the main ideas within the years between 1491 and 1607. So what was going on when Europeans were getting over here? What was their background? What was their history? What were some things about Native Americans? So you need to understand that Native Americans came here over the land bridge in Asia. They settled in different parts of the Americas. They developed very distinct, very complex cultures that were largely based on the environment. So the environments in which they lived shaped how they did things. They were very innovative. So how they approached food production, food gathering, how they lived, where they lived, what they lived in, their social structure, all is centered around the environment. The second thing that I want you to understand is the context that was, or the contact that was going on between, three major groups of people: Europeans, Native Americans, and Africans. Because when the Americas were discovered, this brought together three continents, and ultimately Asia was pulled into it too. But I want you to understand the Columbian Exchange, because the Columbian Exchange, and we're going to get more into the details later, has a lot to do with how Europe and the Americas and Africa blended together in ways that still has an impact on the world today. So social, cultural, economic, political changes that are taking place around the Atlantic. That's what the Atlantic Basin means. So, you need to know the reasons why Europeans were getting out and doing what they were doing. You need to know exactly how the Columbian Exchange impacted the Spanish Empire in North America, and also, too, how once this happened, other things started to change, like worldviews, religion, gender roles, the relationships between men and women. Those things all changed. So you are going to be expected to take notes on each of the key concepts, each of the topics. So your note taking for contextualization, I largely want you to go into your notebooks, and you know how to set them up at this point. So on page 7, you are to develop some notes about this. You can copy verbatim what I have given you in the PowerPoint. I would prefer that you go through and put things in your own words, but what is the context of things that were happening as the Americas were discovered by Europeans and Africans were being brought into the mix. So this will go on page 7 in your notebook. I would like for you to get into the habit of putting titles on these things. So topic 1, 1.1, contextualization of period 1, 1491 to 1607. I'd like for you to be explicit with that, not only on page 7, but also within your table of contents. Okay. Topic 2 deals with Native American societies before European contact. So there's going to be focuses as we start to talk about AP US history. One of these focuses is geography and the environment. It's abbreviated as GEO. So how do these two things impact the development of cultures, people's actions, the development of societies, the development of civilizations, events that happen? What is geography and the environment doing to impact those things? So you need to know some things about what Native Americans were doing prior to Europeans. So maize cultivation is important, knowing how that impacted settlement patterns. Particularly in the southwestern part of the United States. Then you have the Great Plains and Great Basin areas. The dryness of this area impacted how they developed. In the northeastern and Mississippi River Valley and Atlantic seaboard areas, you have Native Americans that developed mixed agricultural economies. They grew crops as well as hunted and gathered. They did have permanent villages, some of them more permanent than others, some of them larger than others. In the northwestern part of the United States, in Washington State and Oregon and present-day California, you had hunting and gathering societies, and some of them even turned to the sea for hunting and gathering. Your note taking for topic 1.2 is to create a chart that details the differences between these different Native American cultural groups. And you have the details there. That goes on page 8 in your notebook. Topic 1.3, European exploration of the Americas. The theme here is America and the world. So how, as America was discovered, and it was brought into interactions with other parts of the globe, what did those interactions do to impact the development of culture, society, the flow of history here, okay? And so 1.3, you're looking at the causes for why Europeans were going abroad. So there's a whole range of things that you're going to be looking at. The main thing I want you to do here with these notes is to look at the causes of exploration, okay, and conquest. This goes on page 9 in your notebook. I will give you a clue that what we talked about last year with God, gold, and glory, that does sum up what these things are. But I would suggest that you put a little bit more detail than God, gold, and glory with this effect cause chart. Okay, so that goes on page 9. 1.4, the Columbian Exchange, the Spanish exploration and conquest. The theme again is geography and the environment. So you're looking at the causes of the Columbian Exchange, the effect of the Columbian Exchange. So what was this event that took place? There's a lot of interconnectedness here. So knowing that it's the exchange of goods, plants, people, diseases back and forth across the Atlantic is the basic definition. But what I want you to do on page 10 in your notebook is to create a cause and effect map, chart, however you want to look at it, that looks at the Columbian Exchange. So what caused the Columbian Exchange to happen? And then what were some things that impacted particularly Europe and the Americas afterwards? Okay, so this goes on page 10 in your notebook. 1.5 deals with labor, slavery, and caste in the colonial system. The focus here is social structures. So how did people organize themselves and interact with one another in the context of the Americas? So you're going to be looking at how particularly the Spanish developed a society that was based on labor systems for the most part, and also started to develop a racial approach. So the encomienda system, the importation of African slaves, and then over time, the casta system that developed in Spanish America. So the activity I want you to do for 1.5 is to create a chart that details each of these three areas. The encomienda, what was that? How did that impact people? What happened with it? African slavery, and then the casta system. If you remember last year, we looked at the casta charts that, like for instance, Native American and European makes mestizo, African and European makes mulatto. So, you have this whole range of different groups that their race and their relative amount of European blood indicated their status in society. So that goes on page 11 in your notebook. 1.6, cultural interactions between Europeans, Native Americans, and Africans. This is America and the world. So, what is happening that makes Europeans, Native Americans start to change how they look at the world because they've come in contact with one another. So there's going to be some things that change. For instance, gender roles were very different between Native Americans in some ways and Europeans. So what were these roles before, and how did they change? Uh, Lots of misunderstandings with one another. Dealt with It affected everything, not just military conflict, but society, economics, governmental structures. Um, Native Americans also did much to defend themselves. So, how were they able to maintain their independence and their freedom uh, in the face of European expansion in the Americas? Uh, you're also going to look too at some of the debates that were taking place between different European groups over whether or not Native Americans were truly human beings. Okay, so those are kind of some rough things to look at. The activity I want you to do for 1.6 is to create a chart that compares Native American and European perspectives on things. So you see, how do they think about land? How do they think about trade and property? How do they think about gender roles? What were their differences in views on religion? So this chart will go on page 12 in your notebook. And there's an example of what the chart looks like. At the end of every period is a topic that deals with a skill that you need to look at within your understanding of U.S. history. So one of these skills is looking at causation. And so you're going to get exposure to these skills throughout the periods. So all you need to worry about for period 1 is looking at causation. What brought things into motion? Okay, so what were the effects of the development of transatlantic voyages? Migration, the movement of people from Asia to the Americas that set in motion some things that changed culture, changed society for these peoples. The adaptation that they went through as they went through the Americas and settled in different places. It caused cultures to change. When different groups of people, Europeans, Native Americans, Africans come together, that set in motion changes like the Columbian Exchange, and then the other things that fell as Europeans began to expand into the Western Hemisphere. So those are things that you need to look at. You, again, could take these notes and you can write them out verbatim, or you can develop them on your own. As we start to get into writing, particularly with your long essay and your DBQ, one of the things that you need to be able to do is to talk about these skills. So you're going to be asked to do one of the 3 skills, and causation is one of them. Just like in every essay, you're going to be asked to put into context what is going on. So topics, the first topic and the last topic within each period deals with contextualization and one of the 3 skills. So this is an overview of your assignments that go in the notebook. So if you look at your notebook, which you should have already set up, and I got the class version here. You will have it set up to where topic 1.1 is going to be on page 7, and then it will follow on, in that order. So, your table of contents ultimately over the next couple of weeks is going to look something like this. Okay, so anyway, I know that there's probably questions, but this kind of sets the tone. So, as you look in Schoology, you see that you have some note-taking assignments. This is not something new. It's what I've just gone over with you. So, but this gives you, in my voice, some direction with the things that you need to be doing. So again, if you have questions, definitely ask, and hopefully this was helpful. So thank you.